And like kids everywhere, learning to drive is a big thing. But every year, thousands of young people are killed on the road.
What happened to Grandpa?
Despite the differences and little details that give us our identity, humans all share a common thread, an underlying anxiety that is carried with us throughout our time here. The inevitability that one day we will die. In his 1915 Our Relation to Death, Sigmund Freud considered there to be a paradox within ourselves. Because while we understand that by being here, we owe nature one death, but seeing or trying to comprehend that death, or the deletion of our being, is impossible. Within many cultures, people cling to spiritual immortality as if their own way of denying nature its due, but a far more obscure act is to fully believe and accept our mortality. While we live, we experience death in a passive role. We see others die, and in the modern age, we become incredibly desensitized to the concept. Many pieces of media attempt to tackle the idea, but after recently finishing Hyper Light Drifter, I truly believe that this game tackles the emotions and struggles facing the concept of death with a refreshing clarity. In simplest terms, Hyper Light Drifter is a video game where you play an unnamed hero who has a terminal illness and is seeking a cure. The truly remarkable thing about this game is the way it doles out information to the player. There's no dialogue to be found. Instead, the world and characters paint the picture with nothing more than context clues. Flashes of unsettling imagery and walking among the ruins leave the details up to the player, which I find to be way more unsettling. This feels like the first death you confront, the death of the world. You were not present for the world's darkest hour, as it feels like you were walking among the ghosts of a crisis long past. Broken down war machines and bones of the fallen litter the areas. Because of this degree of storytelling, there's an underlying confusion or foreign nature to this game. Every character you interact with doesn't have a quick line of dialogue to guide you. Some simply make a noise and move on. Others give picture details of stories, but are never fully explained. This creates distance from you to the world you occupy, which leads into the second death you confront, the death of others. Like mentioned before, within this world you come across corpses and bones of people who have already lost their life, but as you confront these deaths, you yourself become the cause of even more. The death of enemies within the areas, and sometimes the death of people whom you care for. For example, while playing, there's an area east of the central town. It's one of the more brightly colored and seemingly happier environments you come across, but when you arrive, the indigenous people have all been murdered or enslaved. I feel like this area is Hyper Light Drifter summed up. Very pretty, all while very haunting. In her book, How Are We to Confront Death, Françoise Destour explains the human becomes aware of itself as human only through the anxiety in the face of death, which is what is brought back to life by the death of others. Simply speaking, seeing death around you is a stark reminder that one day this will be you, which leads to the final death you confront, your own. From the beginning of the game to the closing moments, it is very clear what is at stake. The hero is a ticking time bomb, and the whole motivation for this game is to save his own life. Coughing up blood and cryptic visions of his own death are some of the most clear details the game hands you. The combat is very fast, hard-hitting action. You die a lot, you struggle, but somehow you keep moving forward. The game gives you a sort of Rocky mentality, seeing if you can stand up one more time than you've been knocked down. I believe that this whole journey is the hero coming to terms with his mortality. At first, I believed this game was about the hero's struggle to delay death or overcome it, but as the game went on, I began to understand he's not trying to do any of that. He is merely trying to accept death, because when confronting our mortality, Does that always mean we are fighting it or trying to escape it? Could we and the hero just consent with death? Because when we consent with death and accept the terms, it's not a defeat, but could very well be the fuel to a meaningful existence.